guys, and in this first video, this first tutorials of Python libraries, we're going to take a look to one of my favorites, and that's the socket library. Basically, it's a Python library that allows you to utilize sockets. Sockets are basically a way for your machine or operating system to create connections between different points on the web or on the internet, and so Python allows you to do that using the library socket. So we're going to take a look at this. First, let's create sockets dot file. That's just a file I will use. So first you need to import socket. So that's how you import the socket. Next step, what we need to do is, we're going to create a socket server, and we're also going to create a socket client, and we're going to communicate between both. This will give you a basic idea of how sockets work. So what we need now is host, which can be local host, or we can just say this in term of local host. This basically means local host, and then the port of the server that we're gonna run, and that would be it. It doesn't really matter, it's the 4000. It's an integer, and we're gonna make the connection, which will be a tuple of both. First the host and port, like that. So we're going to say with socket.socket. Basically, let me just type this out. Okay, so server socket. Okay, so basically what this means is the with keyword allows you to create in a way a stream without needing to use close. It's basically like you do in C# with the using. It closes the stream automatically for you, no matter if it's sockets, if it's file stream, whatever. It just closes the stream automatically for you whenever it needs to. So it doesn't need to. So you don't need to type close. If you didn't use the with, you basically need to do server socket close whenever you have to. So first we need to bind it to the connection, and basically what this does is it binds the server socket to the given host or port. This doesn't mean it listens for connections, it just means it's whenever it needs to listen, to listen on this connection which you bound to it. And so let me say server socket listen. So next, what you need to do, what this does is it allows the server socket to listen for incoming connections. So next, what you need to do is you need to actually get the connection, and we'll get that by saying this, for example, and server socket accept. You can see this fucking AI is really good on this. I'm using Kite, so it's really good. And what this does is this returns you the connection and the address of that connection, and it says server socket accept that connection. Then what you need to do, here what you can do is you can say with connection. This basically initializes the connection. You can print something out here, for example and you can say address here, and here also what you can do if you want is you can have something you can check for in the connection. For example, if the connection doesn't seem right to you, then you just want to accept it. You just make it more obvious. Next, what we need is a while loop, a while true loop. You can make it you can say here while connection, and here you can say connection equals to true. So that's basically where you get the data from the connection. So here you say data equals to connection received, and here you give the amounts of bytes you want to receive. So for this tutorial we're doing this, which you should never actually do this, because what you should do in fact is first receive the amount of bytes that the data has and use that, right? So for example, the client gives the amount of bytes and you use that, but for this tutorial we don't need to do that. And here we can say if not data. This means if there is no data received, you just break out of this loop, and it should be here, and say connection is so this basically means that the connection sends the data back. Okay, so now that's done, let's actually add not here, let's add it here. Let's say print server, socket server license, and here we can say the port. We can say str, so it is in string, so there's no confusion. And now when we run this, get socket server license on. Just exit. Now let me go back and change something here. So what we need to change is add an empty space here. Okay, so now we can say clan line sockets. So again, we import socket, and again we say the host, which is this. So it's basically a very good idea to have a separate file for these things, right? So for these constants, but for the sake of this tutorial we're doing it this way. Okay, so port cost, I think it was 4,000. Check if it was 4,000 or not. And then we have here tuple with the host and port. And again we have pretty much the same thing, but this time we're not creating a server necessarily, just creating a socket that connects to a server. So here we say socket this so let me explain to you what these things mean. Socket.ifinet and socket.stream and socket.stream. So socket.ifinet means that this is a basic socket with the ifinet protocol, meaning it's not an IPv6 socket, it's an IPv4 socket. And this basically means it's a stream of sockets, so it can accept connection, it can receive connections, etc. Basically a UDP socket, or not UDP, TCP socket. So here we say socket dot connect to connection and socket dot. So here you can say send all, and you can say here B. I'll explain to you what this means. Hello from client. Data receive. Again we use this amount of bytes. Okay, we don't need this actually. So basically what is happening is importing the sockets, we're doing the connections, we're doing the with statements, which I already explained, and the send all means we send an amount of bytes without delay. Basically what it means is that we send it all at once, right? So this is not a good idea for doing a real server, for example, because if you send everything at once it might overload, might be too much, might be too slow, etc. So it's a good idea to not use send all, but use other methods and create your own protocols basically. So we'll now open a new window. So I want to have it like this and like this. So first let's run the server. Python 3 sockets go Python I think press, let's see, I forgot. Okay, so we have an error here. Let's see. Okay, so can only concatenate string, not tuple to string. So this is line 16. Okay, so we have socket while line 16. Okay, so the problem is this. Okay, let's delete that line, I guess. Let's run it again. Okay. Okay, so there's a problem here. We need to say print data. Okay, let's start it again. Okay, so it works. As you can see, we get the hello from client. So basically the problem was we're trying to concatenate to a tuple or something, just a normal error, but you basically get the idea. Client, so it's a simple client socket server. You can see here, let's say we can go here, you can change this to client first hello. Let's run the server, let's run the client, and we get here client says hello, and we immediately exit. Now if you don't want to exit, you can start a thread. Obviously listen for incoming connections on that thread, and also run the server at the same time. Okay, that was it. That was a tutorial. Hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.